Hey, muy buenas noches, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. And as always, muchísimas gracias to everyone for your guys' words, prayers, and your amazing support. I just got off the live with everyone, and your support, it humbles me so much. We had a lot of visitors. They call themselves trolls now, right? Come on, and just your support without me having to even say anything is why I try to be as clear, right, with everyone on everything, right? It's not for anything else as these cats put it, but to me it's actually something that talks by himself, and it reflects on its own. So gracias to everyone again. Now to get into the story in him. Today I wanna kinda touch on what I know about the homie Tokes on a personal level, right? But at the same time, I'm not gonna get into detail of his stuff as I been going along telling everybody that's been asking me, right? Out of respect for the family or the homies at the end of the day. He did a lot, right, when it came to camaradas and stuff. In my personal opinion. And but most of all is, you know, the family haven't talked about it, so it's just I feel his name my place, even though I know there's a lot of people on here that or on YouTube, right, that knew they definitely see a way of getting what everybody seeks on here, right? But anyways, well, taking you on the long haul, I want to take you back a little bit before I got out, right, out of the feds. When I got out the feds, I had two different angles when I was heading out here. I knew my responsibility and I knew why I was coming out to Mexico. When that was never gonna, you know, disguise himself from what it was or me taking a different route just because different avenues were gonna be available, right? But, I always been that individual that if I have the means of directing things from one angle and from a different perspective, right? That at the end of the day could be helpful, I'm going to do so. Which, when I was back in Hilo right before, in Willis, they brought the phone to outside your cell. So, I didn't have that. And so, I had came from where that old man from OC had gave me a lot of clecha, right? As camaradas that have wiggled in Mexico that were there and so I had that angle. So I address my family that even though they did their thing, they try to stay clean of the border, right? To some aspect, at least when it came to this side of Nogales and Mexicali, all this area over here, for a lot of different reasons, right? But nevertheless, Mexico it's big, but in that world is everybody knows what everybody's doing. You could be, for example, in Baja California and you know what's happening in DF, Veracruz, because it's just everything has that destination of route, right? But anyways, at this time I address my family basically just I just wanted a heads up, and touching base with my family in Mexico and seeing that if we could gain some ground with them when it came to avenues and pipelines, prices, something that, some camaradas, Billy's have in Mexico, but, they sat on them, you know, uh, not to a greedy extent. It was just, they got involved a little bit extra than how things were, right? And, for example, old man D from Ontario, yeah, he was doing his thing and in touch with everybody and reaching out, but he also took on a lot of responsibilities in Mexico. For example, Sonora, right? And then responsibilities really belong to Sinaloa. Didn't matter how much he wanted to do things across that border, which he did, but it was always, watching out, watching for his butt when it came to doing something negative that was going to have a ricochet from these people, right? And anyways, so at this time, my family told me that to avoid what was Nogales, if it was possible for me to bounce. And I got told who was there in case who they were to a point of respect with that could extend a hand if, but their advice was to shake, right? Which those that are aware of my story know I got there from the border to the bus station and vámonos. I got picked up by a camarada and nos fuimos. But down the line, I got told of different people, right? When it came to not camaradas, but, maña that were there. And one of them at this time was a cat that he's real unknown, in Mexico, at least when it comes to news wise, right? Because he functions differently, In my personal belief, if he didn't have that ego of putting out a song about himself, he would have been in the shadows, right? Because he did things the way he's supposed to. And even though that corrido came out about him, they still got it wrong, when it came to who he's with, which is to some extent wrong. But anyways, that he was, at this time, he was trying to take control of the plaza in Mexicali. And in Tijuas, he had that area of Rosarito and some in that surroundings, right? For El Mayo, yeah, but he was trying to hold it on his own. He was hand in hand with El Ruso, but not underneath El Ruso, right? As they state. But I'm talking about El Caiman. Now he came out to float again because of that song, basically. But they told me that he was a dirty individual. He was one that yeah, he talks a good one, but in reality, he does a whole different one to come out good. Utilizing or taking care of people that he gives work to. Sounds familiar. Anyways, they told me that if I was there, everything's cool with him, but you know, avoid it as well. From another angle, when I got out, we landed, as you guys know, we stopped with Evil right there in Rosarito. Now, but before that, I got introduced to Richie. There was a camarada, Chicali, right? And at this time, Mono from Ontario was there, Tweety with them, all from El Centro. They were all right there in Mexicali. They've been there for a little bit, and they were doing their thing, but they never had, they couldn't get nowhere, right, because of the individual which they were with, which was Caiman, and anyways, I got told different angles. I know a lot of people heard about the loss of Toker, for example, and Evil, because they're, you could say, up there to the point, right? Well, the homie Evil Toker, he's he did his thing, and he's recognized by Raza and Evil for his power, right? When it comes to our side of gente, and but he's actually done it to a lot of homies, and Richie, Mono, and even O, right? They're guilty of it because they kept pushing to just to get Hale, right? Even though they were aware of, just when I stopped there, It was one, two, three, had four homies that were, that had taken the fault or been accused of doing something that wasn't true by this individual, right? El Camion, and they had been picked up, and well, you guys know the rest. I don't want you to trip, right? Nevertheless, at this time, they told me who was where, who was who when it came to Pilis and Camaradas and what they were up to, what they were doing, and just giving clecha. Again, it was part of the recorrido of introducing myself or giving clecha, on what was going on and when it came to us, right? So one of them was the homie, Toker, and the homie was doing his thing, you know. Again, I'm not gonna get too much into stuff, but he was doing his thing, but he wasn't. Basically, there's more money in Mexico, right? If you have a lot of support in Cali from your neighborhood, right? And you're over here sitting down, and you got the means to work hand in hand with one of these individuals and be like, hey, I want, for example, let's just say 10, you know, 10 of this, 10 of this, and you come from a neighborhood where it's easy to flip that, right? Where you want it at, and the avenida's there, right? So now I'm not saying everything the homie had was behind this, but that as I was told, he had two, three houses down here. He was doing good, right? And he was just doing it actually the way that a smart man does it, right? But at the same time, he paid his respects to who he had to pay him in our angle, and he did his thing, right? And it was being respected and left alone. He had like drama coming to him, which I understood exactly what that was. Camaradas from different neighborhoods. Don't matter how solid you are in Cali, in Mexico, it's just heat, just drama. Colas that you can avoid, especially if you're down here with loved ones, right? So, anyways, understood that moving forward, I went with evil, and again, I got told that he's showing respects and he's doing his thing, and it was that's it, right? And so I was at the first time I heard of the dislike of him doing it with Caiman was kind of like a sword type of thing, because again, even though he wasn't known in public, he was known in the underworld, right, for being a dirty individual. Like, I want to give you another example. When I went into TJ, right, there's three carnales, and two of them, they're doing their thing. I'm talking about family wise. They work day to day and paycheck to paycheck. Mexico is difficult, but they had one that, seen the glory in becoming a sicario, right, for this individual. And we're not liked. People seem to always forget that in Mexico, right? That again, what T was doing in Rosarito, like doing him and his business, is keeping people away. It's actually the best way, because you're well aware of we're disliked here. So we allow money to talk and your palabra, right? But you don't mix that with friendship, because there ain't so in Mexico. And I'm not just speaking about when it comes to us, to them. They do it to their bosses, people they protect. Imagine what they do to us that they consider as plásticos. No good, right? Yeah, money talks, so you're there buying it, of course, right? Todo bien. But when push comes to shove, there's already a goal line there. So, anyways, when this happened, they went on a mission, right? On this mission, this one vato, like I said, he was a homie from SGV. I'll just leave it like. And they went in this mission. He was, you could say, the only camarada in that crew that went out to handle business, and things went wrong as they normally do, in Mexico. vas y haces lo que vas a hacer, and gobierno gets involved, things turn out the way they're supposed to, right? And gobierno's gonna sit on things and dome you and basically start the bolita trip. But if you're able to get away, which the homie did, they don't want to hear that excuse, I lost this, because, you know, they don't want to hear it. And when your whole crew that hits with you stays there, right, in the spot, and you're the only one to get away, again, we're not like, so the homie, he hit wherever he hit, right? And what they did is they picked up his carnales, because they wanted to know what dude was. When dude heard this, he turned himself into these individuals. So what they did is they took all three of them to this trash dumping place, basurero. And right outside the truck, they stomped on the brother, right, that not only got away, but he hid, which that automatically threw the rope around his neck, and the excuse is there from the gate, right, with us. So they shot him 2 times in the head. One of the brothers' mistake was that told one of them, "You better kill me. You let me go, I'm gonna hunt you down," which is its own in itself, right? But it's exactly what they did. They called Caimán and asked him, and they said, "Oh hey, en una hielerita." But it's just the individual, he wasn't happy with that, because he felt it was a familia that was gonna lift up us, so wife and kids left too. They, anyways, I lost track. Just to put a little background on how individual was. I keep going down the line. I don't want to touch on them too much, because I'm going to continue with my story here shortly. But we're in Culiacan already, and we're going back and forth, right? Because of gobierno. You got to understand, here, once I hit Sinaloa, yeah, we got suited. We're in a better place, right? To where we're looked at a little different, at least in the respect sense, right? So, but at the end of the day, we were just torpedoes, right? We were just hired for that, and we looked for the angle of prices. We kept it in that sense, right? So there was a little war going on in Mexicali with Richard and them, and just certain things unfolded that homie said, "Chales, we're gonna maintain our avenue, but through a different pipeline." And Caimán wasn't having it, so we were going back and forth, and we were basically, dancing tango with these individuals. But as always, you can only do it so much before gobierno or military comes in, and you gotta split out and sit down and allow things to cool down, and vámonos otra vez. But it cooled down right after a while, because is the is the bipolar part of Billy's, right? After a while, it got talked about them, and it wasn't beneficial to waste so much time and resources on Mexicali, right? So then afterwards, they stayed connected to an extent, but the Billies, that's when they started coming down to Culiacan, and then we started taking different routes, right? Or different things to do. But, there was a camarada that stayed in Rosarito. At this time, Evo had gotten busted already, That camarada, he's a good homie, from Kansas Street. I'll just leave it open like that. He had when Evo took off to the Federales, he stayed behind, doing a lot of responsibilities, right? And he was doing his things. But, me personally, I told him, homie, I got an uncle right here that knows this individual personally, and he says, just to move from Rosarito, and I could hook you up with something different, right? Or not me, but the homie, he was like myself, right? He was loyal, if you want to say that. So within time, he kept doing his thing, you know. Then the years later is when it happened with the homie Tokes, right? So I remember one day when he came down to square some things off to Culiacan. We actually talked a little bit about it, right? Which was, even though the homie wasn't per se involved like that in Mexico, he was still paying his respects, right? When it came to the Phillies, and he was doing his thing. So we want to know what went wrong, basically. And I know what happened with Evil, right? Here in Mexico, one thing you don't do is you co-sign for somebody. You know, it don't matter how much you like somebody, but you never do that. Cause it don't matter how much trust, respect, what if you, we might flip to think is love, but it's just not there. At least when it comes from us to them individuals, right? Or these individuals. And I'm not to speak negative, it's just facts. But you know, just certain things went sideways. And another day, no jale, no feria went missing, none in that senses. But it just went sour and it just didn't matter no more, you know? And it's what eventually ricocheted to how things turn out. But, you know, again, when I personally speak about Caiman, right, I could think at least of 15, at least, camarada that he has taken out, and for some reason it's still being directed by Billy's to keep that alive with him, when it's so clear his dislike for camaradas. Cause believe me, and it wasn't in person, it was over the phone with Evil. They weren't working hand in hand, but it was Evil was there, right? So it was a respect thing, and I heard his way he addressed even the Billy. It's like you would know right away. There were no buts or ifs, right? But again, it's part of, right? Mexico is looked at as better living, cheaper, which it is, and it can be, but it's also easier to get caught up in the wiggle of extra feria, right? Because again, they look at us like a pocho that have that means, right? At least the gente for the flip. But you know, I don't even know if this is gonna make sense. I know I tippy toed around a lot. I try to hit different angles, right? And for those that can understand the wiggles in Mexico and read between the lines, you guys know exactly how things unfolded and under what circumstances, right? Again, it was nothing shady. It was just, you know, here in Mexico they have a saying: if you co-sign for somebody, you ask up front, they'll tell you lo que quieras. Tu boca es tu medida, right? Your mouth is your measure of what you want or you can get. But at the end of the day, you know, when it comes to camaradas, homies, to be sincere, it's just they're always rooting for that opportunity, right? So it's best just to come to Mexico, do your family thing, or come off for vacation and avoid them things, you know. Of course, if not, just be smart about things. But anyways, you know, this individual that was known to take out camaradas, but at the same time, that didn't have no meaning when it came to Billy's, right? Because what they could actually get from this individual, even at what cost, trumped the value of a camarada. So again, just be wise, you know. It's not just going to prison and dealing with things, you know. You could be on the streets and get involved with something, considering it to be at one, that it's going to be at one angle or way, and it's not. You know, just pay attention. But anyways, I know it's going to be a terrible story, and I apologize. So with this said, I'll let you guys rest. Please stay true to yourself, excuse me, and loyal to your loved ones. Buenas noches, blessings.